Just wait for it to start. Good afternoon and welcome to the 5th seminar in the London 2018 Digital Classics Summer Series. And this afternoon, it is my very great pleasure to introduce to you a large team of Leipzig and Florida colleagues who are going to speak about the Digital Rosetta Stone project, which is very exciting, and it includes all sorts of things to do with the Rosetta Stone, from various types of imaging to linguistic annotation to text encoding, to using it for teaching in different disciplines. Before we give them the floor, I should tell you that next week we have Emma Bridges from the ICS and Claire Millington from KCL who are going to speak about editing Wikipedia with the Women's Classical Committee UK. So tune in for that as well. So now we're going to start with Monica Berti from University of Leipzig, then Franziska, also from University of Leipzig, then Josefine from University of Leipzig, then Angelos and Eleni from University of Florida, and then back to Leipzig with Miriam. Correct?
Okay, yes, correct.
Please, Monica.
Okay, thank you very much. And I have to start sharing my screen. Okay, and I think I can start presenting. Okay, so today my name is Monica Berti. I'm from Leipzig, as Simona said, and today we present the Digital Rosetta Stone project, which is the result of a collaboration between the Abteilung Digital Humanities and the Egyptologisches Institute of the University of Leipzig for working with the Rosetta Stone in a digital environment. This project is supported by Labor Uni, which is a project of the University of Leipzig for excellence in teaching, and is funded by the German Bundesministerium für Forschung und Bildung. Bildung und Forschung, Entschuldigung. And so this is both a research and a teaching project, and this is the reason why we have been organizing different seminars and workshops, not only with colleagues, but also with students in digital humanities, Egyptology, in classics, and computer science, to see really how they can work together. The project, well, we are also very grateful to the British Museum, and in particular to Ilona Regulski, who is here with us today, because we had the possibility yesterday to take pictures, and I have, to take pictures of the Rosetta Stone in the British Museum. Here you have a first time lapse of our day yesterday. So we took pictures of the stone because part of the project is also to work with images and to produce a 3D model of the stone, and also to align high resolution pictures with the text of the Rosetta Stone, with textual and translation alignments of the 3 scripts of the Rosetta Stone, and other things that we are developing. So this is a first a time lapse. I'm going back to the slides. Okay. So we also have a collaboration with the Humboldt University in Berlin, because we have colleagues there working for using the TI for marking up in general hieroglyphs, and we started our collaboration a few years ago, organizing a first workshop, Altertumswissenschaften in a Digital Age, Egyptology, Papyrology, and Beyond, which was the first opportunity to have classicists and Egyptologists working together for addressing different issues in general in the digital environment, like character encoding, textual alignment, marking up, etc. Then Today, this is the agenda for today. We are many speakers. As you can see, we will talk about the document and then about the goals of our project. Now, a few words about the reason why, well, I'm interested in the project and how everything started. I'm not an Egyptologist, I am a classicist. My main interest is in ancient Greek fragmentary historians, and have been producing the digital version of the Fragmente Historicorum Graecorum, which is this big collection of more than 600 ancient Greek historians. And in the first volume, this is a collection of the 19th century, produced between the 40s and the 70s of the 19th century. And at the end of the first volume, we have also an essay by Letron about the Marmor Rosettanum, the Rosetta Stone. This part is not strictly connected to ancient Greek fragmentary historiography, but at the time, the French publisher Didot decided to add this essay at the end of the first volume after a section about the Marmorparium. Due to the importance, of course, of the document, this volume was published in 1841, about 20 years after the decipherment of hieroglyphs, and Champollion asked Letron to translate the Greek text of the Rosetta Stone, to produce a literal French translation of the Rosetta Stone. And this is what we have in this volume. Of course, at the time, there were less documents about Egypt in the 2nd century BC, and also Letron tried to show that the Greek text was the first text produced of the Rosetta Stone. And then, of course, other documents came up. And you can find the digital version of this essay of the 19th century. Of course, this is old scholarship in some way, but you can find an online version of the printed edition about the Marmor Rosettanum with the introduction. There is then a French commentary about the archaeology and the history of the Rosetta Stone, and the Greek text with a literal French translation. And here you also have a complete index of the Rosetta Stone, of the Greek text, of course, of the Rosetta Stone, which is interesting to see also how scholars at the time work with this document. So the idea was to expand this. I'm not an Egyptologist, so that's why I involved, first of all, my colleague Franziska Naether in Leipzig. She's the Egyptologist, to see how we could work together. And then we had the idea to go on and in some way to use this fundamental document for experimenting with different digital tools. And now we also have a collaboration with the University of Florida for experimenting with images. But now is my colleague Franziska who can speak about the monument.
So this is your first switch of speakers for tonight. Hello from my side as well. I'm really glad to be among you colleagues here from the Senate House and also from the British Museum. It's actually a little bit of bringing old to Athens to talk about the Rosetta Stone, about its contents, but it belongs a little bit into this presentation because during the years I've seen a lot of people in the world know about the Rosetta Stone, but very few know what's on it. This changed a little bit with the digital world because people keep rediscovering it, or people go to London and know a little bit more about it. And in some areas where Egyptology is taught, people especially teach the decrees, so the decrees in general, the Greco-Roman ones, the Ptolemaic ones, but also the elderly Egyptian ones. One thing that is to be said is that the Rosetta Stone in its form as a formulaic document comes from Greek honorary inscriptions. So it's a formula. That's what makes it also easy for, or not easy, but at least exploitable for Champollion to decipher parts of it, of the Egyptian from this document. But we also have the text type of decree much earlier in Egyptian, the way how the king communicated laws or decrees to the people. And there's a lot of interesting questions arising about that. How did this kind of communication work? Where did these decrees have been erected? And we do a digital humanities project, but we try to also think about these things, not to forget about the material culture. The Rosetta Stone is a decree with decisions from a priestly synod where the crown and the priests met in Memphis, basically from the Ptolemaic period, and we have a couple of such documents, and it was written up in a trilingual form. The first language that we have, where we only have a few lines left on the top of the stone, is written in hieroglyphic script, but the language is a very old form of Egyptian. It's Middle Egyptian, or something we call Égyptien de tradition, because this kind of language was not spoken at that time. What was spoken and written was Demotic. That's the language inscribed in the middle. And of course, the form of ancient Greek at the end. Some facts and figures: it was drawn up in the year 196 BC in the first year of King Ptolemy V. He was very young at the time, 13 years only, so you can actually think who was doing politics at the time. It was definitely not that teeny. And the stone was found in Rosetta, which is on the east, a town in the east of the Nile Delta in Lower Egypt. The material is very peculiar. It's granodiorite. It's a very hard and shiny material, which was used a couple of times for decrees of that kind. And if it would have been complete, it might have been about 1.50 meters height. How do we know that? By comparison of other decrees like that. You can see on the right-hand slide a picture with my students a few years ago with the Canopus decree, another decree. And there you only can see the facsimile of a hieroglyphic part and the Greek part. The Demotic part of that decree is actually on the back side of the stone. And if you have a look at the picture, you can see there are not just students standing on the side and behind, there are also some on a chair. So it's really a huge stone. It's a very interesting story to tell how the Rosetta Stone was found, how it was first in French possession, how it came into the possession of the English and ended up in the British Museum. That's a story especially to tell for our colleagues in the exhibit coming up in 2022. So I won't say too much about that, but it's a very interesting story and really fascinating. Next, alongside with the politics and the cult issues and all the other things that are written in the decree. As for deciphering the hieroglyphs, we now know that it's not just the Rosetta Stone that contributed as a main monument for Champollion in order to be able to lay out the principles of Egyptian in his famous Lettre à Monsieur Dacier, where he wrote about the principles and where he also added a lot of charts, and you can see a few of them in the slides here. The main monument, as we know now, is the so-called Banks obelisk, which is depicted in the middle of the slide. This was found out by research of our colleague Wolfgang Schenkel from Tübingen, who went through the archives of the British Museum and other things, and he actually found out that the Rosetta Stone was made the most important document by Champollion, but basically most of the principles of Egyptian language and of the decipherment was what he derived from the Banks obelisk, which is standing today in front of a English count house in Dorset. So that's very interesting to read more about that, and this is published in the Festschrift for Werner Kaiser. Once again, a picture of Champollion and some of his drawings in Demotic and hieroglyphic in this very famous document, the Lettre à Monsieur Dacier. Greek epigraphy, of course, published much earlier, an edition of the stone, including a restoration of the bottom right corner that's missing, because the knowledge about ancient Greek was never lost, as it was for Egyptian. So we were pretty quick on this side. Egyptology was a little bit slower, but all these three languages make the Rosetta Stone a perfect poster boy to show what digital humanities can do today. Monica already mentioned that we collaborated with a couple of people. There's a couple of issues that we have during working on all the things we want to do, alignment, entry banking, what Josefina is going to tell you in a minute. One thing which we are still struggling with in Egyptology is that there is no Unicode font yet for hieroglyphs, Demotic, and hieratic. There is something that is existing. There's a couple of people working on that. We are, of course, connected with all of them, especially also through our conference in 2015 that Monica was mentioning. So if something comes up, and it will come up in the near future, we will be happy to integrate that. Right now, we are working with transliteration of Egyptian, and this is a font that we have in Unicode. So the transliteration signs are fully available, and that's what we're working with right now. And as soon as the people who work in Berkeley, in Heidelberg, in Brown, and also now some in Leipzig working for the Ptolemaic hieroglyphics, we will be happy to integrate that. And this is the point when I hand over to our next speaker, Josefina.
So, hello everybody, my name is Josephine Hensel and I'm research assistant in the Digital Rosetta project. we have much to present for you, and so we don't have time. I apologize for reading my script. So, the first, what is textual alignment and what is it used for? Textual alignment is a horizontal word linking method that digitally supports the acquisition of language and language comparison. With such a digital tool, we can compare texts and languages, we can learn foreign languages, and it is also helpful for studying ancient texts. Scholars could benefit from using this method. They will be able to examine texts in an ancient language which they don't know themselves. Yes, I forget, okay. For the alignment activity, there are several tools online. Today, I want to present the so-called Ugarit Eye Aligner, which was developed by Tarek Youssef in the framework of his PhD thesis at the Digital Humanities Chair at the University of Leipzig. Before our project started, there was a test case with the Alfiers Alignment Editor, which is a tool of the Perseid's platform you can see on this slide and the following one. The hieroglyphic part of the Rosetta was used as a case study for aligning the text with Alfiers. The screenshot above illustrates the test alignment of the German and English translation of the hieroglyphic text. The picture below was an attempt to align ancient Egyptian with English. Like I said before, we used another tool within our project because Alfiers was inadequate concerning our goals. With the Rosetta Stone, we have to compare 3 texts in 2 languages. That means we need an alignment tool with 3 text editor boxes. Alfiers has only 2. Now I show you the Ugarit Eye Aligner. On the slide, you can see the Audit Homepage. In the middle, there is a visualization of which the tool is aiming to achieve, namely to connect languages. If you scroll down, first you can see a list of the users. A part of them is in the left corner on the slide, and the languages into which they are uploading texts. If you follow, it follows a second list. Have a look on the right side on the slide. Here the visitor gets an overview about all the existing translations pairs. For instance, Greek-English, Persian-French-English, or Greek-Japanese-English, and many, many more. At the present time, there are 317,986 pairs and 22,307 texts in 30 languages. These are ancient and modern ones, for instance, ancient Egyptian and Greek, Arabic, Chinese, Coptic, French, Hebrew, Latin, Old Nubian, Persian, or Spanish. This is the Translation Alignment Editor. Ugarit offers the possibility to align up to 3 languages. The user only has to insert his text and to choose the languages. After Align, the user's work is getting started. The first part of the editor surface is for metadata. Under this table, there's the alignment. Here, the 2 or 3 texts are placed opposite each other. For aligning them, the corresponding words are selected and linked with a mouse click. Between the source and target languages, there could occur several relationships, for instance, 1-to-1 or 1-to-n, or 2-to-2 and n-to-n. The Memphis Decree was aligned in 2 ways within our project. Each of the 3 written languages of the decree has been edited individually with the Ugarit Eye Aligner. One example is on this slide. Line 5 of the hieroglyphic text, its translation into Demotic, line 20 till 22, and its Greek counterpart. The kind of aligning each inscription tries to connect the languages word by word if it is possible. Some examples are highlighted on the screenshots. The relationship between 2 languages is different. Sometimes we have 1-to-1 or 1-to-2 or n-to-1 alignments. To compare all inscriptions under the question of textual affinity, a synopsis has been created within the project. This served as the basis for a second alignment, which is focusing on the translations from Middle Egyptian into Demotic into Greek. With this alignment, we want to analyze how close the ancient Egyptian and Greek languages are. The slide presents you 2 examples of the Synoptic Alignment. The first one is paragraph 6 after our categorization of the decree. Only the demotic and the Greek text has transmitted. The second example, paragraph 41, is conserved in all inscriptions. A word-by-word alignment in these cases would be possible too, but we decided to align phrases within a paragraph because it is a more clear visualization. In both examples, I have colored some phrases to demonstrate a principle. Except of one sentence group, the first paragraph is nearly translated one-to-one. The underlined phrase, Panechaperi netina antai f medet neferet, is not given in the Greek text. In the second paragraph, you can see that the content in general is the same, but all inscriptions are expressing it in a quite different way. If you have a look at the colored word groups, for example, passage to shine becomes chai, to appear, and this becomes peritetemi, to carry in Greek. Or a second example, the chut kaptach becomes menefer in the demotic text and memphei in the Greek text. And the last example, the Middle Egyptian verb chesed, to receive, becomes a noun plus a definite article, par chesed, in the demotic text, the assumption, which is translated also as a noun, paralepsis, in Greek. To sum up, the majority of the synoptic comparison led to the following cases. Verbs or nouns are not changing into another word type. Verbs are becoming a noun or a nominalization. A noun is transferred into a verb or a verbal construction. There are Egyptian phrases which are not translated into Greek. The Greek text is often more detailed as the Egyptian counterparts, and it uses a lot of prepositions. And all text uses genitive constructions and adverbial phrases. Most of them are very close in the expression. They are only small modifications. The next one. After the comparative study of the three inscriptions, we start a second examination, the analysis of both the sentence and word structure of ancient Egyptian and Greek. For this analysis, we benefit from our cooperation with the digital humanities and their tools once more, the so-called tree banking. This time, our work is still in progress, but I will present you an example for good practice to give you an introduction into the method. First of all, tree banking is a digital tool for annotating text syntactically. In the end, the sentence is visualized in a tree structure to illustrate a relationship or dependency between all the sentence elements. On the first level, see the left box on the slide, the sentence will be analyzed. Is it a main or a subordinate clause? Which type of sentence underlies what functions do the single sentence elements perform? On the second level, have a look on the right box. Each word will be determined in a morphological, syntactic, and semantic way. That means its word form, its relationship to other words, its structure and its parts, for instance, the stem, the root, the prefix or suffix. The basic work for tree banking is a detailed grammar analysis of the text. Each text has to be separated in its smallest elements, the single words. These are then described in a code in which all grammatical informations are put together. The coding of words occurs on the base of the Leipzig glossing rules, which were modified for ancient Egyptian by Daniel Werning, Frank Kammerzell, and Camilla Di Biase Dyson, published in Lingua Egyptia 17 in 2009. Now I want to show you a digital tool for the graphic visualization of a coded text. The Aretusa tool is a part of the above-mentioned Perseid's platform. On this slide, you see one example how tree banking of one sentence could look like. It is a sentence of the Greek part of the Rosetta Stone. The whole text was a test case done by Giuseppe Gelano from the Digital Humanities Chair at Leipzig. The structure of the user surface is simple. In the headline, see the green arrow, there is the focused sentence. Note that an English translation by Carol Andrews is added for you on the right corner because it's not given in Aretusa. Each word is written in another color. Same colors mean identical word categories, for instance, noun or adjective. The blue box offers different options for viewing and focusing the morphograph, like the following sheet is presenting. What does the morphograph is telling us about the sentence structure and its elements? On the right side, you see some tabs framed blue, for instance, morph, relation, SG, AT, and so on. To get the informations, you have to choose a word from the sentence you are interested in. It will be highlighted in the morphograph. See the yellow arrow. Then you click on the tab you need. For example, the morph tab. Here are informations about the word structure based on the glossing. In our example, hieros, an adjective, plural, neutrum, dative. Having a look at the morphograph, the linking lines between the words show their function in the sentence. For instance, adverb or object or an attribute. In our project, we want to do the tree banking for the hieroglyphic and the demotic text of the Rosetta. For the ancient Egyptian, it is a new digital tool. There are just a few tryouts. Last but not least, some statistics about the Greek text based on the test cases with tree banking and alignment. It will be added as soon as possible with the statistics for the Egyptian text of the Rosetta. And now my colleagues Eleni and Angelos will give you some information about what we have done yesterday in the British Museum. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Eleni Bozia from the University of Florida and the Associate Director of the Digital Epigraphy and Archaeology project. And I would first like to thank Monica and Franziska and the University of Leipzig for involving us with this very exciting project and for cementing the relationship between the University of Leipzig, the Digital Epigraphy project, and the University of Florida. The Digital Epigraphy and Archaeology project focuses on the 3D digitization, analysis, and advanced visualizations of, initially we started with ancient copies of inscriptions, paper copies, the ectipa, and we developed our own method that it is based on the shape from shading technique, which is very self-explanatory. Basically, we are using our own algorithm that utilizes only 2 scanned images that we take from a basic office scanner. So we scan the ectipon twice, and based on the name of the method, shape from shading, we acquire all the necessary information from the light or lack thereof as to where the inscribed surfaces are, and we can thus reconstruct the 3D model of the copy of the inscription. We started with this technique in 2007, and we have our website, digitalepigraphy.org. And then we expanded, we used other 3D digitization methods and tools. We have experimented with Kinect 1 and Kinect 2, as well as the occipital structure sensor. However, as you can imagine, even though we can accommodate with the scanning technology, we can accommodate ectipa of small dimensions, and with the other technologies, like laser scanning and the occipital structure sensor, we can accommodate larger surfaces like statues and vases. We have also the case of larger artifacts that, however, have an inscription on them, which poses a different problem. We can have 3D digitization methods that can capture the entire shape, but we cannot get the details of the letters. However, for an artifact such as the Rosetta Stone, we cannot, of course, create the ectipon, the paper copy of the inscription, and then scan it on a regular office scanner because of the size. So we had to utilize different methods and combine them essentially. So what we decided to do, and we have also used that when we 3D digitized the Ares style from the Monumentum Anchiranum, we decided to simulate the scanning process. So basically, we are, you can see in the image there, we have a source light, excuse me, next to the Rosetta Stone, and we are taking pictures, moving the lighting source along the Rosetta Stone, from the left, from the right, from the top, and from the bottom, and taking pictures, having the source light coming from different points, and shading and lighting the inscribed surface from different angles and viewpoints. That way, we essentially want to acquire all the information that we would have acquired had we been able to use an office scanner, a regular scanner. And then we are going to use, and my colleague Angelos is going to give you the information as to how we are going to combine all these images in order to then produce the 3D model. So, Angelos.
Hello, my name is Andros Barboudis, and I'm also working on the digital epigraphy and archaeology project at the University of Florida. And in this slide, as you can see, this is a preliminary result of 4 pictures that focus on exactly the same spot of Rosetta Stone. What is different on these pictures, as Eleni explained, is the light source. We have, by moving the light source but keeping the camera in a fixed point of view, it captures differences on the shading that reflects the actual underlying structure, detailed structure on each point of this inscription. So although the same exact text is shown, the differences on shading are significant enough to capture, again, the 3-dimensional structure that could be recovered. Now, one step of this post-processing is this quadridirectional lighting shape from shading, which basically, as you can see here, improves significantly the legibility of the text. What happens basically by combining the 4 pictures that you saw in the previous slide, we reconstruct in a sense the shape, and we can remove all the shading, the shadows that appear in there, which reveals basically the depth, a depth map of this generally flat surface. What is problematic in this particular case that this shape shading technique works very well if the material properties of the object are very well known. For instance, for paper, ectipa, it's a very porous medium, and there is no significant specularity, for instance, something that is not the case in here. So the underlying model has to be made appropriate to accommodate specularity and other properties in the case of this type of material. But one of the first post-processing steps here is to actually use the information of this of these four pictures, the scanning that we did. And this is a small example of the reconstructed depth trace. In other words, we reveal basically those points that are deeper than the others, than the actual surface that is generally flat. And it looks like as if we had a papyrus and ink on the top, basically, of this material. And it is significantly, again, improvement. The goal is to use this type of imagery along with the text analysis and annotation, so that we can direct the reader, the student, the educator, the scholar to the source text and be able to verify or study the alignment on the very source form that is shown in here. But of course, the actual 3D model could be reconstructed. We have not done that as the scanning session was yesterday here, but we're showing an example from a similar project of the Resgestyle that basically this is the last step of the shape from shading to, instead of showing this depth map, to actually visualize it in a 3-dimensional mode with a sub-millimeter accuracy of the 3D reconstructed points. In addition to this quadridirectional light scanning, we did 3D scanning to capture not the fine details of the inscription, but the overall structure of the shape. And this was done using an infrared depth sensor for mobile devices. We used an iPad actually with the occipital structure sensor. And as you can see, the overall shape of the stone here has been captured. And if we append on that the very fine details of the 3D reconstructed inscription, we have a multimodal digitization of the stone that will become, of course, available online along with the other modalities of the text. And now we have the last transition for today.
Hello everybody from me as well. I'm Miriam Amin and I work as a research assistant in the Digital Rosetta Stone project in Leipzig. And my role in the project is to visualize the results in order to publish them online, in fact to combine the results of the textual alignment that Josephine Hensel presented you before with the high resolution scan we did yesterday. Why should we visualize the results of the textual alignment anyway, you can ask, because as Josephine showed you before, the tool we're using already provides a kind of visualization, but we want to bring the text even closer back to the object and display the parallelities we found in the alignment directly on the stone. And here in the slides on the right side, you can already see a mock-up for a planned visualization, and that will be published online as soon as it's finished. And I will now explain you how it will work. The user can hover with his or her mouse over the stone, and for each sentence in every language, the corresponding sentences in the other languages will be highlighted on the photo. And clicking on one of these sentences will lead the user to more information about the lines, about the morphosyntactic information of the text, and will also display a translation and a synoptic analysis. And this way, we think it's a good way to connect the abstract textual information, the abstract analytics of the text back to the original object. And as a really nice side effect, we give people that are capable of reading the demotic and the hieroglyphic scripts the possibility to actually read the script on the stone. That wasn't actually possible before, because the majority, or actually all of the pictures of the Rosetta Stone that could be found online had a too poor quality to read it. And that's actually why we took the effort and took the photo and high resolution scan yesterday. So how did we make this visualization work? In order to connect the three versions of the same unit of meaning to each another and to their translation, and also to their coordinates in the high resolution picture, we developed an XML schema that matched our requirements. So actually we treated the stone as a hierarchically structured document. And let's take a closer look on how we structured our data in order to visualize it. Here I try to depict what I'm now going to explain to you on this slide. On the left side of the slide, you see a screenshot of our XML file that contains one single unit of meaning in its three different versions. So the demotic, the hieroglyphs, and the ancient Greek. And on the right side, you can see which structural unit in the XML file it refers to. So our root element is the stone itself. That is the whole decree with all the scripts on it. And the next smaller structural element is one single unit of meaning, such as, for example, a sentence. But hereby we mean the abstract form, so the unit of meaning independent from its representation in one single language, in one specific language. That means this element is actually not, this element that contains this single unit of meaning is not on the stone directly, but you can find the three different versions of it. And this, like every unit of meaning, has itself three child elements: the demotic, the hieroglyphs, and the ancient Greek. And each of these languages has also three child elements. One is the transcription, where we store the actual text that is on the stone in its scientific transcription. A translation. For now, we only have a German translation, but English translation is planned. And we also store the coordinates. And these are the link back to the image, because they show where on the image this actual line can be found. And this is actually how we compose the structure of the document in order to be able to visualize it in a meaningful way. And maybe a short notice about the text technical realization. We use the JavaScript query to get the XML documents from an external source, XML source, and then we build it up to create an HTML image map, and all this is implemented in a Typo 3 environment. Thank you. And finally, it's me again, Franziska.
We don't start again. We're trying.
We're not So the project is not only about research and development on the stone, on the languages, on the apps that we're using. It's also a project where we should involve students very early on. It's not just our colleagues that we are working with. Josephine is also a PhD student in Egyptology. Miriam does her second studies in digital humanities. It's also about integrating these techniques into seminars that we are teaching. Monica is teaching a couple of seminars. I do as well. You can find on the slide a whole list of what we did and how we also cooperated with colleagues and other institutes and our institutes, or even in Halle. Because the idea is that students learn these techniques and these apps and the contents, of course, of the stone, and also demotic. It was actually demotic yesterday. Students had no course with me because I was here. Next week, we are going to read the first 10 lines of the Rosetta Stone. And I will be able to bring a couple of really nice new pictures with us to read them. Because believe me, it could be a bit of a pain to read demotic in epigraphic text. So for me, at least, papyri are a little bit more comfortable. Nice hands, especially. So the Rosetta Stone, especially the determinatives and epigraphic material, could be a bit of a pain. So we're going to do that because it belongs to the real life of a scholar, not only having nicely read text, thinking about the text, and also trying out the app. And this is a win-win-win situation for us because the developers get a feedback how the tools are working, the students learn something, and an assignment of the student will be for their exams to add text themselves into the Ugarit pool. So I've assigned, for instance, the Canopus degree, the Gallus stele, and other things as exams. So we all, as the community, will end up with more text in that tool that can be studied and analyzed in that way. Perspectives arising from this one-year project are that we can work with similar text, that other scholars can use it. We had a couple of presentations in the last days, and some scholars approached that who work with Persian material, for instance, which is also trilingual, and even have a fourth language with matching text on statues and inscriptions. So they could use the tool and analyze it in that way. And we can also think about other text sources and using our methodology with it. For instance, the magical papyri, which some of you know are written in Greek and Demotic and even more scripts and languages. So exciting perspectives that are arising. And now we are happy. Thank you for your attention and happy to take your questions.
Okay, that was something. Fantastic project. I have a number of questions, but let's open the floor first to the audience. We can maybe broadcast a couple of the questions for discussion, and then I'll close it. So if you wouldn't want your question to be forever on YouTube, maybe only a couple minutes.
This is a video, a first video of yesterday during our visit to the British Museum, as you can see. So Eleni and Angelos working. And so we spent 2 hours, 2 intense hours, thanks to the help of the British Museum, the staff. They were very, very helpful. And so we had this unique opportunity to see the Rosetta Stone without the glass.
Well, I guess hard is you have nothing to hide.
Yeah.
I have a question for Eleni and Angelos. I was really impressed by the way that you sort of hack low-cost technologies to produce digital cultural heritage. And I was wondering if, when you were in the British Museum, you decided, okay, we are in the British Museum, so now we have to use, the high-cost gear. or if you stuck with your choice of using consumer technology, so that we can show, okay, everyone can actually produce this, even universities or research groups with very low budget can produce something like this.
To be honest, we tried, the technology with which we stuck is still low budget technology. I know that you have to strike a balance. On the one hand, you need to bring to the people the best possible results, to academia, students, other scholars. So you don't want to waste an opportunity like this. On the other hand, if we work with something that costs $500 million, then essentially we're only making accessible this one artifact. So we are trying still for this, and Angelos can give you more details, but we used a camera, a regular camera with a bigger zoom lens, and the rest of the technology, the lighting source and everything is very cost.
Something we could buy on eBay.
Yes.
And more sophisticated technology, laser scanning, can be used, but have a certain requirement. For instance, they have their own platform, so to increase the precision, the environment has to be very specific, calibrated before. So in many cases, it will require a larger amount of time. Not just 2 hours, so maybe like a week, just to calibrate, set up scanners and something around the stone. And typically this takes place not in the museum, not in the actual public part of the museum, but in a warehouse. So that would require the actual stone.